Alright, this is one of those few times. I post here because usually these problems aren't as bad and I can handle them on my own. This time, however, it's gonna be a little crazy. Let me start from the get-go. Basically, what happens in my family is that my husband Gail is very attached to his family, especially his parents. It's gone to the point where if they jump, he's not going to ask why. Instead, he's going to ask how high. Obviously, that level of dependence and trust can sometimes come back to bite you even when you don't realize it. That's what's happening with Gail. He doesn't realize how damaging his dependence is getting, and when I try to tell him about it, he just gets mad at me. The very main reason that all this happened, and the reason I'm posting this story, is because my husband has been spoiling them since the very beginning. I get wanting to take care of your parents. I do. If my parents were living near us, I'd like to take care of them as much as possible too. But I would not do it to the extent that Gail and I do. That's the limit that I understand we don't have to cross. But Gail, unfortunately, does not. My in-laws have been asking us for money. Since we've both got stable incomes, and it's not like my in-laws are not well off or anything like that. They don't necessarily need the money from us. They can support themselves and even afford certain luxuries, so they don't need to ask for money, but they still do. Initially, I was okay with it because I understood that they're Gail's parents, and I'd need to fit them into our lives as well, but over time I got a bit icky about it. We've sent them so much money over the past years that if we saved that amount, we'd be able to go abroad on a vacation twice. I told Gail that he should not spend all his money on them simply because, well, then there's nothing left for us to save. But he did not understand. He started arguing with me, telling me that we're living a comfortable and well-fed life. So why can't this spare some extra money we have and just give it to his parents? I tried to make him understand that it's not about not supporting them. It's about him not caring about supporting me. We would need money if we ever decided to have kids, and if we wanted to make a big purchase or anything like that. It looked like he understood my point, but he still was not willing to stop giving them money. That made me so angry that I almost left the house that night. My anger was fueled even more when I remembered how they treated me in the past. If they were nice and loving ones who treated me well and let me feel like I was actually a part of the family, maybe I'd be nicer to them. They were horrible to me. They never made me feel like I was a part of the family at all. And when I needed them to be there for me, they weren't. When Gail and I got married, we weren't that well off. I had just graduated, and it had not been that long since Gail started working as well. This meant that we didn't actually have enough money to invest in a house and buy it. I perfectly remember Gail and I going to my in-laws and having a proper discussion with them, telling them about everything we're going through and making them explain how hard it is. However, when we asked for some money to start the process, they immediately said no. It's like they did not even take any time to think it through. Instead, they just gave us an hour-long lecture on how we're adults now, so we need to be responsible and take care of our savings and whatnot. They told us that we needed to work extra hard to achieve our dreams and every other crap they could possibly spit from their mouth. I was a bit frustrated at their response, but I decided not to say anything and just kept my thoughts to myself. It was heartbreaking to see them not helping out their own children. But if Gail was okay with it, then I thought I needed to be fine with it as well. But then they did it again a year and a half ago. I inherited a house from my mother. It was a beautiful house, but it needed a lot of work. Obviously, we did not have the money or the resources needed to make these changes. I mean, we had some of the money saved, but we needed a bit more than that, and so we decided to ask my in-laws again for some money. Just a little sum of money to help us get the house ready to live in, but they said no to that too. And instead, they told us to earn our money and stop asking them for money. Not just that, but they told me to sell the house and invest in something that's actually useful and not something that looks like crap. As soon as I heard that, there were fumes coming out of my ears. This house was very precious to me as something that was connected to my mother, and to hear my in-laws talking about it like it was trash was very hurtful. I did not express that to them because I thought I would look rude, but I should have. Maybe then they would not be as shameless as they are right now. I'll tell you guys exactly why they're shameless though. So basically, after they rejected us, I gathered money and worked my butt off to renovate the house. I made it look presentable, and I made it look amazing. It was hard. But once I started earning as well, things got a bit easier so I could manage it. Anyways, it had been a few months since I invited my in-laws for dinner for my mother-in-law's birthday. By that time, the house looked absolutely incredible. I made it as perfect as I could, and I was very proud of it. Moving on, the day they actually came over for dinner, I was expected to go pretty well because, well, usually, if it's not money related, the conversation stays pretty squabble-free. Obviously, with these people, there's not one moment where you're not discussing money. So they come over, and as soon as they enter the house, their eyes go wide. Internally, I'm smirking because I know they did not expect me to go this hard on the renovation. Wide-eyed. They're completing my house way too much. I mean, some compliments are fine, like, oh, you did a wonderful job, or oh, your house looks incredible. But there was so much more. Every part of the house they'd stop, inspect, and then just ask me how much it cost. Why would they ask that for some stuff? Yeah, I get curious about it, especially because they knew we did not have the money. It's not like they gave us the money either, so I'm sure they were curious as to how I managed to afford all this, but honestly, I found their questions a little rude. It just felt way too forced. Like they weren't actually interested in the job I did or how pretty I made it look. They were just interested in how much it cost, and I actually did not realize it back then, but after what happened during dinner, it all made complete sense to me. Dinner was chaotic, to say the least. It started out very decent. It was a good conversation going on, and it even had a nice flow to it. But then my mother-in-law started talking about dream vacations. First, she asked me what my dream vacation was and where I'd like to go the most. But when I answered her question, it felt like she wasn't really interested and was waiting for me to finish as soon as possible. I gave her what she wanted, of course, and I made my answer very short, just the name of the place, and then she got all excited all of a sudden. That's when I get a bit suspicious, because there's no way that she was that excited for me, and then she opened up about the real reason behind all the weird acts that they've been doing ever since they stepped into this house. They wanted us to help them build a vacation house after all the years of rejecting us every time we've asked him for financial help. They'd come to us and asked us to pay for the quote vacation house. They're not even poor or anything. Why do they need our help? Why can't they save up enough and get a house for themselves? They think that just because I've managed to get my house to look so gorgeous, we're some sort of rich couple now, I guess. But we're not. I asked them to explain it to me a bit more just so I could have a better idea of what they need and why they're getting a vacation house and stuff. But the response shocked me. They want to get one just because they're bored with their lives and they want a house to be able to go to every other weekend. For some reason, they can't afford the house by themselves, and they told us that they know that we've got money saved on because this house looks like it costs a lot. At that point, I was aggravated, and so I told them we did not have that kind of money to waste. That was very wrong too. Say because Gale looked at me like I murdered his parents in front of him as soon as these words were out of my mouth. He glared at me and told me that anything that we spent on his parents' happiness was never a waste and I needed to quote, watch what I say, which is ridiculous because he knew I was right. A vacation house is not a necessity to have, and it's not like they're going to die if they don't get it. My father-in-law still works and they can save up and get one by themselves. They don't want to do that though. They want us to give them money so they can take the easy way out. Then I remembered that Gale is not an only child. He has an older brother as well, so why weren't they asking him for money? I brought that up because they were getting too defensive and looked like they were about to make a living hell for me. Apparently, Seb isn't as financially stable as us, so they don't want to burden him with this. Oh, I'm sorry, but I could not keep my mouth shut at that point, and I expressed what I was feeling, but I made sure I was not being disrespectful. Seb was earning as much as we were. He just had children to take care of, so most of its expenses were going towards that. However, I wanted to try it for kids as well. And if we kept giving my in-laws money, how would I save enough to take care of my children? The counter-argument we received was that we don't have children right now, which means we've got more money to spare than Seb and his family. And then they started emotionally blackmailing Gale because they knew that they would not be able to get through to me. They started talking about how they were lonely and bored because both their sons had started their own families, which is why a vacation would benefit them really. Well, Gale fell into the trap because why wouldn't he? As soon as his parents get a little bit emotional, he does everything that's asked of him. I knew I could not give him in, but I didn't want my in-laws to know they've won us over. How I kept saying that the arguments were progressively getting worse and unstoppable. Well, this is the consequence of that. A week ago, Gale and I had one of our biggest fights. We've never fought this hard before, and it was actually a bit weird how aggressive he was. Obviously, there was no physical aggression. He wasn't raising his hand to me or anything, but his words hit much harder. He basically told me that $100,000 he's planning to give to his parents is not just mine, so he can do whatever he wants with it. He thinks that he was being nice by asking for my opinion and my permission before taking action on his own. But he doesn't need to do that anymore. The fight got worse when he actually gave the money to his parents, and he returned home from work one day and did not even bother mentioning anything to me. It wasn't until my mother-in-law called me to tell me that she got the money that I found out that he gave it away. I was enraged, obviously. We had not discussed giving the money away, and he knew I was not okay with the fact. Yet he was still going to go ahead and just give it away. He didn't even keep a single dollar for ourselves. The entire $100,000 he saved up over the years, he gave to his parents. Then, when I told him that he needed to get the money back, he told me to shut up and let him deal with his parents how he wanted. Even when I was factually arguing that we're a couple and we should decide on big financial decisions together, he wasn't having it. It seemed like he totally got tired of us constantly arguing because he threatened me with a divorce right in the middle of our argument. He suddenly screamed at me and told me if I tried stopping him from giving a share of the money to his parents, he was going to get a divorce and leave me all alone. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I've been with him through everything in his life, and now he was going to leave me because I was trying to put our family first instead of his parents. At that point, all I could ask him was if he did not care about what I wanted and how I wanted to build our life together, have children, and live a happy life. He cared for none of it, but instead, he wanted to give all this to his parents while I was suffering in the background. In a moment of anger, he walked out of the house and slammed the door behind him. And it's been a week since he's been home. I've tried texting him multiple times. I've called him so many times, and I've left more than a dozen voicemails. But he keeps ignoring them or leaving me on hold. Guys, I'm so hurt because I didn't think I'd ever lose Gail, especially over something as silly as this. I've contacted my in-laws, and it turned out that Gail had gone back to live with them for the past week. He hasn't been home once, and I'm so stressed and confused about what's going to happen and how I'm going to deal with everything. Update number 3. So a few more days into this mess, I decided that I could not keep myself trapped in this family forever, especially if they act as messed up as they are right now. I was not sure about my decision in the early days, but now, after waiting for Gail to come home for more than a week, I decided that I needed to take action and set him straight. Well, if he wants a divorce, that's exactly what he's going to get. So I contacted my lawyer first thing that morning and let him know the situation. She let me know that I could not only divorce Gail, but also take him to court. After the entire meeting ended, I decided that I did not need this house anymore. The only thing it was doing now was reminding me of my husband and all the good and bad memories that we've had together. That's why I decided to sell the house and keep the money for myself. Gail could not even ask for this money legally because the house was in my name, given to me by my mother, and I could do anything I pleased with it, right? So I sold it. It brought me a lot of money, which helped make the court case much easier to process. So the next day, while I finalized the divorce papers and had them sent to Gail, I knew the exact time he received those papers because I got the most heated phone call one could ever get. He was talking about how I was being stupid, and it didn't matter because he was going to divorce me as well. And then he got to find out about me taking him to court, and he absolutely exploded. Obviously, no one wants to go there or anything, but I hung up on him midway because I've had enough of his anger now. Then the days of the court case came. I was feeling all kinds of jitters, and I was nervous. What if it went wrong? What if I lose the money I've made from selling the house? All these kinds of questions were racing in my head. But I did not let them take control of me. I got dressed in a way that I said was confident, put my best smile on, and I reached the court doors. It was the final hearing of the divorce, and it went incredibly well. Not only did I get to keep all the money from the house, I also got $100 from Gail as alimony as a legal obligation. I was shocked. I did not expect to win more money from him, but it was worth it for all the damages he's done to me and to my mental health. I should accept this money with grace. The sour expression on their faces just added to my glee, and I knew that they thought that they could rob me of my money and my house, but they probably weren't expecting to lose everything themselves. It's been a few days since then, and life has been relatively peaceful. I did get a phone call from my mother-in-law, where she was bashing me for what I've done and told me I could never have a family of my own because I don't know how to take care of people, that I'm just incredibly selfish who only looks at her needs and not others. Apart from that, it's been okay. I got a new apartment for myself using the money I made selling the house, and now I can finally save up as much money as I want without having to worry about other people constantly asking for it. But let me know, guys. Do you think I went too far by taking him to court? Let me know in the comments down below. I was a little surprised when I was reading the comment section of this one. Let me break down what some of the comments were saying. Some of them were actually coming up with the idea by saying, you know what, I don't really blame Gail. I mean, what's wrong with giving your parents $100,000 when you have $200,000? But there were other commenters basically saying, no, that's ridiculous. Like OP said, they've been helping his parents for years. They're trying to build their own house, and they need that money. So this is where the comments really split apart. They were saying they do not agree that OP should just sell the house, take the money because it's under her name. They thought that was disrespectful. But there were about 50 saying no, that was exactly what she needed to do. So guys, drop your comments down below. Let's discuss this one. My name is Mr. Reddit. I narrate stories every single day. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya. Thank you. Oh, isn't this exquisite? It's not just lovely. It's a pink diamond, and it comes with a price tag of $50,000. My mother-in-law, who couldn't be bothered to attend my own mother's funeral, appears to be relishing a lavish getaway with her friends, completely oblivious to my presence. She gleefully shared details about her new sparkling pink diamond ring, seemingly fueled by jealousy towards a friend who flaunted a similar ring. In her triumph, she revels in having outdone her friend by choosing a more expensive ring from the same store. However, the reality is far from what it seems. It's implausible for her to afford such a costly item, and it turns out she had secretly taken money from my husband's safe to make the purchase. This money, crucial for her future, had been earmarked for her nursing home fees. My name is Hillary Johnson, a 46-year-old woman living with my husband Steve, who is 7 years my senior, and our high school senior daughter Gina. Despite not being wealthy, we lead a stable life. I have worked part-time at a local drugstore for over a decade, and my hobby is cultivating herbs. Lately, I've been challenging myself with a medical herb certification exam. Gina and I often discuss her future dreams, bringing us joy. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, introducing significant changes to our modest lifestyle. According to his will, the house went to Steve, and the cash to my mother-in-law. The money was intended for her nursing home fees, given her age of 75. Despite this, she pleaded tearfully to live in the house, and after much debate, we agreed to cohabitate for a year while searching for a suitable home. The area where the family home is situated has now become a popular high-end residential area. Still, we are not wealthy. It's an old land holding. I learned that my mother-in-law had a habit of spending recklessly, and though I had prepared for it to some extent, the reality was shocking. As Steve heads out for dinner shopping, my mother-in-law, on the first day of our cohabitation, casually asks, "Hillary, could you lend me some money? I'm going out." "Thank you. Just in case something comes up, and I need more, give me $100 for now," she says under the pretext of buying dinner. I found myself pondering how much groceries she intended to purchase. Despite my reservations, I made the mistake of giving her the requested amount. 2 hours later, she returned by taxi, laden with bags from an upscale department store filled with expensive deli items and sweets. "Tonight, we feast. I wanted to try these side dishes. They're supposed to be delicious, and we have desserts too," she exclaimed proudly. Curious, I asked, "Mother, how much did this cost?" She replied, "Well, let's see. I went a bit over because of the taxi, but I covered the extra, so it's fine." Her proud declaration left me speechless, but little did I know this was just the beginning. Managing finances became my biggest headache after moving to the family home. While my father-in-law was alive, we used online supermarkets for groceries, paying with his card. Learning from my initial mistake of giving her large sums of money, I no longer entrusted her with shopping and kept the wallet in a locked drawer. Unhappy with not receiving money, she stopped doing any housework, caring only for the flowers at the entrance. Despite our monthly allowance of $300, she squandered it on clothes, beauty salons, meals, or coffee with neighbors. By mid-month, she would usually run out of money and ask for more. Frustrated by her reckless spending, as I was saving for my daughter's education, I calmly admonished her when she requested more money for a lunch date with friends. "Even Steve, who works, gets an allowance of $300. I can't give you more than someone who's working, so please use it more wisely." Dissatisfied, she returned to her room, likely to ask Steve for money later. The allowance came from the nursing home fund, and if it diminished, it would be her who suffered. When Steve came home, I expressed my concerns. "Did your mother ask you for more allowance again?" He replied, "Yes, she did. But I can't be too hard on her. She must be lonely without Dad. She's always been vain, you know. But I want to fulfill her wishes for at least this year that she's here." "I understand, but your kindness isn't truly benefiting her. Besides, it will eventually have repercussions for us." "You're right. I get it. My mother-in-law had a tendency to flaunt, especially in front of her 3 old friends who were mothers of my husband's classmates living in the neighborhood. I became aware of this during the funeral arrangements for my father-in-law. Steve, it's your father's funeral, so arrange the altar this way and get more extravagant flowers. The neighbors are coming. Don't embarrass your father, she instructed. Steve, being the spouse, complied with her demands to some extent, but the costs were significantly high. My mother-in-law's primary aim was to show off to the neighbors. I even felt sympathy for her, having to keep up with people from a different lifestyle. During the funeral, she only greeted 3 families of her friends. One day, after having lunch with her friends, she came back excited, her eyes sparkling. Today, Debbie showed me a ring worth $20,000 that she got from her husband for their golden wedding anniversary. I've never seen a $20,000 ring before. That's a wonderful gift. You don't have such wealthy friends, do you, Hillary? You'll probably never see anything like that in your life, she remarked with superiority and sarcasm, using her friends to boast. Hillary, you're so plain. Why don't you put on some makeup? Have you ever been to an upscale lunch? It was all about one-upping me. I tried to ignore her words, but she seemed increasingly hostile towards me, especially after I refused to give her more money. After settling my father-in-law's affairs and starting to look for a nursing home, my mother's health took a turn for the worse. When my sister and I rushed to the hospital, the doctor informed us that she had about 3 months to live due to advanced cancer. She was in a fragile state and could deteriorate at any time. My mother had occasionally mentioned feeling unwell before, but being a person of great endurance, it wasn't easy for her to show any signs of weakness. I regretted not paying more attention to her. I asked my sister to stay with her while I went to fetch some clothes and valuables from her apartment. As I packed a large bag in her room, I found some cash, likely her living expenses for the month, in a drawer. I took the cash with me, planning to shower and head back to the hospital. I left the bag in Steve's upstairs room and, after getting ready, noticed the zipper slightly open. A sense of unease washed over me as I checked the bag and found the cash missing. Suppressing my rising anger, I went downstairs to my mother-in-law's room. "Mother, may I ask you something?" I inquired as she prepared to leave. Turning around, she asked, "How's your mother doing? I have plans with my friends right now." I confronted her. "The money that was in the bag in our room, you have it, don't you? That money belongs to my mother. Please return it." "I don't know what you're talking about. I never go upstairs." "Are you accusing me of stealing?" she retorted, rushing past me and heading for the door. "I'm going out for a fancy Chinese dinner with my friends tonight, so I don't need your poor excuse for a meal. Give my regards to your mother." With a smirk on her face, she left the house, leaving me in shock. Just then, Jenna came home and asked, "Mom, are you okay?" "Your grandmother's money. My mother-in-law took it." Unable to confront her without evidence, tears naturally started to fall from my eyes. Jenna gently stroked my back to calm me down. "That's terrible. It must have been her. I've seen her coming down from upstairs before. To think she would stoop to taking your grandmother's money. I can't forgive her. But how's Grandma? If you're going to the hospital, I'll come with you. Let's think of a way to get back at her." As we walked, Jenna's words encouraged me, lightening my heart a bit. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law, I decided to protect my family in my own way. A few days later, my mother's condition suddenly worsened, and she passed away. In her final days, she was mostly in a daze, occasionally lucid. I expressed my gratitude to her repeatedly for raising me, for her love, for Gina's future dreams, for the plans with Steve, and for our old age. She didn't speak, but her eyes smiled gently and sometimes nodded. While talking to her, I remembered a visit to my father-in-law before his death. He had thought about divorcing my mother-in-law, but didn't want to trouble his son and his wife. He asked me to sell the house and put my mother-in-law in a nursing home after his death. That's when he told me about her spending habits. Her attitude changed when Steve started kindergarten, living in a wealthy area, feeling pressure to keep up with rich neighbors. She deluded herself into thinking she was wealthy too, possibly fueled by Steve's success in a famous company. I regretted not putting her in a nursing home sooner. It could have prevented the theft of my mother's money. Steve and Gina arrived in time for my mother's final moments, but only my sister and her husband were there at the end. When we returned home to prepare for the funeral, my mother-in-law was out. I decided to show her the last bit of kindness. We held a small funeral for my mother without her presence. I tried calling her, but she was out and never answered. When I returned home after the funeral, everything was quiet as if she had stayed out overnight. Then, my mother-in-law returned in a good mood. "My condolences for your loss. It must have been hard," she greeted me. I noticed a shiny new jewel in her hand that I had never seen before. "Oh, this look, isn't it beautiful?" "A pink diamond. It cost $50,000. How did you get that, Mother?" I asked. She replied, "I bought it, of course." Debbie introduced me to the store. It's a reservation-only place in New York City, so I went for an overnight stay with my friends. The hotel we stayed at, and the meals were wonderful. To my astonishment, my mother-in-law indulged in luxuries during my mother's funeral, enjoying an overnight trip to New York with friends. I was left speechless with disbelief. I bought something even more expensive than what Debbie showed me. "Feels good, Mother," my mother-in-law declared. I couldn't comprehend how she obtained such an expensive item. "You don't have that kind of money. How did you get it?" I questioned. Nonchalantly, she replied, "Oh, I found it in Steve's room safe. My passbook was in there with exactly $50,000. Since it's in my passbook, it's my money, right?" I felt frozen and disappointed by her actions during my mother's funeral, although, in all honesty, her behavior was somewhat expected. It was confirmed that she had entered our room upstairs. The passbook was in the safe of the study room that Steve now uses. The safe was an old dial type, and Steve, finding it tedious to turn the dial, left it unlocked, thinking the study was locked anyway. On the day my mother passed away, I intentionally left the study unlocked, suspecting that she might take the opportunity to enter our room and take the passbook from the safe. That $50,000 is from my father's inheritance. Do you understand what that means? I asked her. Unperturbed, she replied, "I know it's my money left by your father. So what's wrong with using it?" I began to feel pity for my mother-in-law. "Sure, it's your money and you're free to use it. But that was meant for your old age. We'll be moving out, so please manage on your own from now on." At first, my mother-in-law looked confused, but she slowly turned pale as she understood my words. "Wait, isn't there a separate fund for the nursing home? It's more than this amount, right?" she inquired. I explained, yes, there was more, but it decreased due to the inflated funeral costs of my father-in-law and your monthly requests for more allowance from Steve. Feeling the need to illustrate the alternatives, I handed her brochures of lovely nursing homes I had collected over several months. She looked at them speechless and shaking. At that moment, Steve and Gina came down from upstairs. I had reported to them after opening the study, so they had come to check. Steve, initially skeptical that his mother had stolen the money, had no complaints about what I did. While I would have properly arranged for my mother-in-law's nursing home if nothing had happened, her intrusion into our room and the theft of the money prompted me to protect my family. I had made it clear that entering our room and touching the money was unacceptable. I decided to sever ties with her for life. "Steve, you'll stay in this house, right? It's sad to sell a house filled with memories, but taking care of parents is a son's duty." I desperately clung to Steve. Checking the safe, I realized she had taken more than the passbook, the cash I withdrew for the car inspection too. "That's too much. I trusted you, Steve," I said, shocked by her actions. Struggling to speak, Steve admitted, "Oh, I have it. Just borrowed a bit. It was $11,000. But that wasn't all." "What about Hillary's mother's money?" I demanded. Panicking, she replied, "Oh, I'll return that too." "Then it's fine, right, Hillary? You'll forgive me now, won't you?" She hastily handed me the money, possibly pretending about the $50,000 ring. Until the end, there were no words of apology about my mother's money. I'm sorry, but I can't live with you anymore. I'll protect my own family from now on, I declared. She broke down crying, clinging to Steve till the end. However, Steve's grief-stricken anger was intense, and he acted quickly. He sold her belongings to create a lump sum and found a nursing home affordable on her pension. The chosen home, though, was far from the family home. I probably won't see her again in my lifetime. Steve occasionally gets calls from the home, and she seems calmer now, possibly settling into her new environment. I regretted not placing her in a home earlier. Perhaps if we hadn't lived in that house, her life might have been happier. A part of me felt a little sympathy for her. After she left, we moved, waiting for Jenna's graduation. Jenna got into her desired university and started living on her own. The family home, being in a popular area, quickly found a buyer. Steve is now applying for a transfer to a branch near the sea. We plan to spend a few years until retirement there, searching for our final home. We hope to continue living peacefully and harmoniously as a family.